My daughter threw my suitcase onto the front porch like it was a bag of trash. It hit the steps with a dull thud, the faded burgundy leather scuffed and the zipper broken. She stood there with her arms crossed, her face colder than the Oregon winter. "You're holding us back, Martha," she said. "Me, Jason, the kids, everyone. You've turned this house into a prison and we're done being your inmates." I didn't cry. I was far past that. I just looked at the corner of my sweater hanging out of the bag like a tongue and realized she had finally folded me out of her life like a cluttered napkin. Before I continue this story, please take 1 second to like, subscribe, share, and comment where you are watching from and what time it is right now in your country. I always love reading your messages and hearing from people around the world. I stood there for another moment staring at the porch light glowing above Sarah's head. It was the same porch light I bought 12 years ago during a winter sale because she said the old one made the house look cheap. I remembered climbing that ladder myself while my knees hurt from arthritis because Jason kept promising he would do it tomorrow. Tomorrow never came with Jason. It rarely came with Sarah either. The cold wind pushed against my coat as I bent down and picked up my suitcase. One wheel was missing. My shoulder ached when I lifted it. Sarah did not help me. She simply watched me like I was a stranger parked in front of her house. Leo peeked through the living room curtains. His little face looked pale and confused. He was only 9 years old but smart enough to understand something terrible was happening. I forced a smile at him. He raised his hand slowly against the glass. Then Jason appeared behind Sarah holding a wine glass in one hand and his phone in the other. He looked annoyed more than guilty. "You should go, Martha," he said. "Dragging this out is making it harder on everyone." Harder on everyone. Those words sat heavy inside my chest because for 10 years I had made life easier for everyone in that house except myself. I cooked meals. I cleaned bathrooms. I folded laundry. I watched Leo after school. I paid utility bills when Sarah forgot. I even gave Jason money twice when he claimed his business checks were delayed. And now I was standing outside in the freezing dark with a broken suitcase while the people I carried on my back looked relieved to finally throw me away. I nodded once and walked toward my old sedan parked near the curb. My hand shook as I placed the suitcase into the trunk. Not from sadness anymore. Sadness had burned out years ago. What remained was exhaustion. The drive to the motel took almost 40 minutes. Rain tapped softly against the windshield while old country music played low on the radio. Every red light gave me another memory I wished I could erase. Sarah at 6 years old sitting on my lap eating cereal before school. Sarah at 13 crying because girls at school mocked her thrift store shoes. Sarah at 18 hugging me after graduation promising she would take care of me one day. Promises are strange things. Some people make them like decorations. Pretty to look at but worthless when touched. The motel smelled like bleach and old carpet. The man at the front desk barely looked up when he handed me the key card. Room 12. I carried my suitcase inside and locked the door behind me. The room had one small bed, a stained lamp, and curtains with cigarette burns near the edges. I sat down slowly and listened to the silence. No shouting. No fake laughter from Sarah's social media videos. No Jason stomping around the kitchen complaining about stress. Just silence. For the first time in years, I could hear myself think. I made tea using the tiny coffee machine in the room. It tasted bitter and earthy, but the warmth helped steady my hands. Then I reached for my phone and called Robert. He answered after 2 rings. "Martha?" His voice softened immediately. Robert had been my lawyer for almost 15 years. More importantly, he had become one of the few people who still spoke to me with kindness. She finally did it, I said quietly. There was silence on the line. She kicked you out? Yes. He sighed deeply. Are you safe? I'm fine. I looked around the motel room while speaking. I need you to remove my name from the mortgage agreement immediately. Robert paused. Martha, you know what will happen if you do that. Yes. She probably cannot refinance a loan. I know. Another pause. You spent 10 years protecting her. I know that too. My voice cracked slightly, but I kept going. I'm tired, Robert. I can't keep holding up someone who keeps pretending I ruined her life. Robert lowered his voice. She still tells people you never helped her, doesn't she? I laughed softly, but there was no humor in it. She tells people she built everything herself. Neither of us spoke for a moment because we both remembered the truth. 10 years earlier, Sarah had almost destroyed her own future in a single night. She was 20 years old, drunk and speeding through an intersection after leaving a party with friends. Her car slammed into another vehicle carrying a young mother and her 5-year-old son. The boy survived but suffered serious injuries. I still remember arriving at the police station at 2 in the morning wearing slippers and an old coat thrown over my pajamas. Sarah sat in a chair crying, mascara down her face, repeating over and over that she did not mean it. The victims wanted charges. The newspapers were already preparing stories. Sarah could have gone to prison. And I panicked. I sold jewelry from my grandmother. I emptied my retirement account. I even refinanced my own home to help pay a private settlement to the boy's family after negotiations. The mother eventually agreed not to pursue further action because she needed money for her son's medical care. Sarah walked away with probation, community service, and a second chance. A second chance built entirely from my sacrifice. But over time, Sarah rewrote history. First to strangers, then friends, then eventually herself. She started calling herself self-made. A survivor. A woman who overcame toxic family pressure. Every time I heard those words, I felt invisible. Robert cleared his throat, gently pulling me back to the present. I'll prepare the paperwork tomorrow morning, he said. Thank you. Martha? Yes? You did more than most mothers ever would. I closed my eyes. Maybe that was the problem. After hanging up, I stared at the motel ceiling for a long time. At midnight, my phone buzzed with notifications. I opened social media and immediately saw Sarah's newest post. She stood beside Jason holding a champagne glass, smiling brightly. The caption read, "To fresh starts and finally cutting the cord. No more dead weight." Thousands of likes already. Comments poured underneath. You are so brave. Protect your peace. Toxic parents hate boundaries. One woman commented, some mothers drain their daughters forever. Sarah liked that comment. My chest tightened, but I kept scrolling. Then I saw another post from her wellness page. A pastel background with white text. Do not inherit trauma. Burn it. People shared it hundreds of times. I placed my phone face down on the bed. The strange thing about betrayal is that the pain is not always loud. Sometimes it arrives quietly, like cold air slipping under a door. I thought about all the mornings I woke up before sunrise to pack Leo's lunches while Sarah slept after filming motivational videos late into the night. I thought about every electric bill I secretly covered. Every lie I told banks and landlords to protect her reputation. Every insult I swallowed because I believed eventually she would remember who stood beside her when nobody else would. But some people only remember what benefits them. Around 2 in the morning, I heard rain hitting harder against the motel window. I walked over and stared outside at the empty parking lot glowing under weak yellow lights. For the first time in years, I allowed myself to ask a terrifying question. What if helping Sarah all those years had not saved her? What if it only taught her that someone else would always clean up the damage? The next morning, I woke up with a stiff back and swollen eyes. For a few seconds, I forgot where I was. Then I saw the cracked motel ceiling and remembered everything. I sat up slowly and checked my phone. 23 missed calls from Sarah. 8 voice messages. 3 texts from Jason. I did not open any of them right away. Instead, I washed my face in the tiny bathroom sink and stared at my reflection. My gray hair looked messy and the skin beneath my eyes sagged with exhaustion. I looked older than 63. Stress ages people in ways mirrors cannot fully explain. I made another cup of terrible motel coffee and finally listened to the first voicemail. "Mom, what did you do?" Sarah sounded furious, not hurt. "The bank called me this morning saying there are changes being made to the mortgage paperwork." "Are you serious right now? You're trying to sabotage me because we needed space?" The second voicemail came 10 minutes later. "You are acting insane. Jason says this is emotional abuse. Call me back immediately." The third message was quieter. "Martha, please. Do not do this. We can talk like adults." Adults. I almost laughed. For years I had been the only adult in that house. I deleted the voicemails without responding. Then my phone rang again. "Sarah." I stared at the screen before finally answering. "What?" There was heavy breathing on the other end. "How could you remove your name without warning me?" "I just did warn you. You know I can't refinance a loan." "That sounds like a problem for the homeowner." "You promised to help me." "I already helped you, Sarah. For 10 years. Her voice sharpened immediately. "So this is revenge because I asked for boundaries?" "No. This is what boundaries actually look like." Silence. Then she lowered her voice into that fake calm tone she used in her videos. "You're unstable right now." I closed my eyes. There it was. The same trick she always used whenever someone disagreed with her. Make them sound emotional so she could appear reasonable. "I'm not unstable," I said quietly. "I'm finally stepping back." "You are destroying Leo's home." "No, Sarah. You are. You know Jason's business has been slow." "And whose fault is that?" "He's trying." I looked out the motel window at the gray rainy morning. "Trying is not the same as doing." She suddenly snapped. "Fine. Since you want honesty, let's be honest. You make everyone miserable. The constant guilt. The hovering. The way you act like a martyr all the time." I listened without interrupting. "You think cooking dinner gives you ownership over our lives? You never let me breathe." I spoke softly. "You mean I never let you collapse?" "That's exactly what I mean. You always treated me like I was broken." The words hit hard because deep down I knew there was some truth inside them. I had protected Sarah so fiercely after the accident that maybe I never allowed her to fully face herself. But protecting someone from consequences is not the same as loving them. Sometimes it is fear wearing a mother's face. "I hope one day you understand why this happened," I said. "Oh, I understand perfectly. You can't stand losing control." Then she hung up. I sat motionless for several minutes afterward. Not because I believed her words, but because part of me wondered when my daughter became someone I no longer recognized. Around noon, Robert called. The paperwork has officially started, he said. The bank notified Sarah this morning. She already screamed at me. I figured. He hesitated before continuing. There's something else you should know. The bank reviewed her financial history during the process. And? She's worse off than you realized, Martha. I frowned. What do you mean? She has missed several payments over the past year. My stomach tightened. How many? 7. I nearly dropped the phone. 7? She kept catching up just before legal action started. Barely. I leaned back slowly against the motel wall. Sarah always acted successful online. Expensive yoga retreats. Wellness seminars. Organic food sponsorships. Photos of smiling clients hugging her after empowerment workshops. But now I saw the truth more clearly. The entire life was balancing on rotten wood. Robert continued. She also has unresolved business debt from that cafe she opened with Jason. I rubbed my forehead. That failed 3 years ago. Yes. But the debt did not disappear. How bad is it? Very. I closed my eyes again. 10 years of sacrifice, and somehow Sarah was still drowning. Not because she lacked opportunity. Because she never learned responsibility. After the call ended, I drove to a nearby grocery store to buy a few things. Bread, soup, toothpaste. Normal little items that suddenly felt strangely comforting. As I walked through the parking lot, an older woman smiled at me while loading groceries into her car. Simple kindness. I almost forgot what that felt like. Back in the motel room, I turned on the television for background noise while eating canned soup. A local news anchor talked about rising housing prices. Another story covered a celebrity divorce. Ordinary problems. Meanwhile, my entire family was quietly collapsing. That evening my phone buzzed again, but this time it was Leo calling from Sarah's phone. I answered immediately. Hi, sweetheart. His small voice sounded shaky. Grandma, where are you? My throat tightened. I'm staying somewhere safe for a little while. Mom says you're mad. I'm not mad at you. I know. There was silence for a moment. Then he whispered. Did I do something wrong? That nearly broke me. No, baby. Never. She cried after talking to the bank. I stared down at my tea. I'm sorry you had to see that. She keeps yelling at Jason too. Children always hear more than adults think they do. Are you okay? I guess. Then his voice dropped even lower. Grandma, are we gonna lose the house? I could not lie to him. I don't know, sweetheart. He sniffled quietly. I don't want to change schools. The pain in his voice cut deeper than Sarah's insults ever could. I know. Can I see you soon? Tears finally filled my eyes. Yes. Anytime. Before hanging up, he whispered something that stayed with me all night. You always make things feel safe. After the call ended, I sat on the edge of the bed crying silently into my hands. Not because of Sarah. Because of Leo. Children suffer the most when adults build lives out of pride and denial. 3 days later, the official notice arrived. Sarah had 30 days to refinance the mortgage or the bank would begin foreclosure procedures. 30 days. I imagined her standing at the kitchen counter opening the letter with shaking hands while Jason pretended to have solutions. My phone exploded with calls again that afternoon. This time Jason left a voicemail. Martha, listen. We need to figure this out together. Sarah's under pressure and you're making emotional decisions. Emotional decisions. Interesting choice of words coming from a man who never paid a bill on time. He called again later. You know, if the house goes under, Leo suffers too. I finally answered that one. Where was this concern when my suitcase was thrown outside? He went quiet. That situation got heated. No, Jason. It got honest. You know, Sarah has trauma. I almost laughed. Sarah has excuses. His voice hardened. You're being cruel. I stood and walked toward the motel window. No. Cruel would have been letting her face prison 10 years ago. Silence. Long, heavy silence. Jason clearly knew pieces of the accident story but not the full truth. You never told me exactly what happened back then, he said carefully. Because Sarah made me promise not to. Another pause. Then quietly. Was it really that bad? I looked out at the gray clouds hanging low over the city. A little boy almost died. Jason stopped speaking. You should ask your wellness queen about that before she posts another quote about healing. Then I hung up. That night Sarah posted another smiling photo online, but this time people noticed something different. Her eyes looked swollen. The caption read, "Sometimes family attacks you when you start choosing yourself." Thousands of supportive comments flooded in again. But mixed among them were questions. Why is your mom suddenly leaving? What happened exactly? Something feels off here. For the first time, cracks were appearing in the image she carefully built. And deep inside, I knew something else too. The truth has strange timing. It stays buried for years until suddenly one tiny crack lets everything rise to the surface at once. And once truth begins breathing, it rarely stops. A week passed and Sarah's life began unraveling faster than even I expected. At first, she tried to keep pretending online. Every morning she uploaded smiling videos about healing and self-worth. She lit candles in soft lighting and spoke calmly into the camera about protecting your energy from toxic people. Thousands still watched her. Thousands still believed her. But behind the screen, reality was closing in. Banks rejected her applications one after another. Her income looked unstable. Her debt history looked terrible. And without my signature attached to the mortgage, no lender wanted the risk. Robert updated me almost daily. She's getting desperate, he told me during one phone call. How bad? She tried applying through smaller lenders too. And? They refused. I leaned back in the motel chair slowly. For years I feared this moment. I feared what would happen if I ever stopped holding everything together. Now I was finally seeing the answer. The entire structure collapsed almost immediately. That same evening Sarah called again, but this time she sounded different. Less angry. More frightened. Mom, please. I stayed silent. We just need more time. You had 10 years. I know, but things got complicated. They were always complicated, Sarah. I just kept cleaning up the mess before you noticed it. She started crying softly. Real crying this time, not the dramatic kind she used online. Leo is scared. I know. He called me. You talked to him? Yes. Her voice sharpened slightly. You should have asked me first. I closed my eyes. Sarah, your son needed comfort, not permission forms. She sniffled. I'm trying, okay? No. You're panicking. That's unfair. No, sweetheart. What's unfair is asking one person to carry everyone forever. Silence filled the line again. Then quietly she asked something I never expected. Did you ever hate me for what happened? The accident. Even after 10 years, she still could not say the words directly. I answered honestly. No. I hated what you became afterward. She breathed shakily. I was young. Yes. I was drunk. Yes. I made one mistake. I gripped the phone tighter. No, Sarah. The accident was one mistake. Spending 10 years pretending you earned everything alone was another. She started crying harder. You don't understand how ashamed I felt. I stared at the motel ceiling. Oh, I understood. That's why I protected you. Then my voice softened. But shame only changes people when they face it. You buried yours under inspirational quotes and social media filters. She did not answer. For a second, I almost felt sorry for her again. That dangerous old instinct pulling at me. The instinct every mother knows. The urge to protect your child even when they become the storm destroying you. But then I remembered my suitcase landing on the porch. I remembered Leo asking if losing the house was his fault. And I stayed firm. 3 days later, the foreclosure notice arrived. A bright legal paper taped directly onto the front door. Sarah called screaming the moment she saw it. This is your fault. No. It's the bank's decision. You know they only did this because you pulled out. I stepped aside. You're punishing me. I walked slowly across the motel room while holding the phone. I'm not punishing you, Sarah. I'm simply giving you the life you asked for. You're unbelievable. No. What's unbelievable is how long I kept pretending your choices were my responsibility. She started yelling louder, but I stopped listening halfway through. Because something inside me had changed. For the first time in years, her anger no longer controlled my heartbeat. After hanging up, I drove to the park near Leo's school and sat quietly on a bench watching children play soccer. Cold wind rustled through the trees while parents stood nearby holding coffee cups. Normal families. Messy maybe. But normal. I wondered where exactly Sarah and I lost each other. Maybe after the accident. Maybe earlier. Or maybe some people slowly become strangers one tiny decision at a time. That afternoon, Leo met me there after school. He ran toward me immediately and wrapped his arms tightly around my waist. I hugged him longer than usual. You okay, buddy? He nodded, but his eyes looked tired. Mom cries a lot now. I swallowed hard. I'm sorry. She and Jason fight every night. We sat together on the bench while he ate fries from a paper bag. Then he asked quietly, are adults always pretending? The question stunned me. What do you mean? He kicked lightly at the dirt. At home, everybody acts happy online, but then they scream after the camera turns off. I looked at him carefully. Children notice everything. The internet only shows pieces of people, I said gently. So it's fake? Sometimes. He stared at the playground for a while before speaking again. Mom says you abandoned us. That one hurt. But I answered calmly. I never abandoned you, Leo. I know. Then he leaned against my arm. You always came back. My eyes burned again. After dropping him home, I stayed parked across the street for several minutes. The house looked beautiful from outside. Fresh paint. Decorative lights. Expensive plants near the porch. A perfect picture hiding disaster. Suddenly Sarah stormed outside holding her phone against her ear, screaming at someone. Probably another lender. Jason followed her, trying to calm her down, but she shoved his hand away. For the first time, I saw fear in her body language. Real fear. Not performative sadness for an audience. She looked like someone finally realizing there was no safety net left beneath her. That night, everything changed. Around midnight, Robert called me urgently. "Martha, are you awake?" "Yes." "What happened?" "You need to look online." My stomach tightened immediately. I opened social media. At the top of the trending page was Sarah's name. Thousands of posts. Thousands. Then I saw the blog. A woman named Diane had published a long article exposing the truth about the accident from 10 years earlier. Diane was the aunt of the little boy Sarah hit. Apparently, she had seen Sarah's recent posts about freedom and cutting toxic people out of her life. And something inside her finally snapped. The blog included everything: police records, old hospital photos, details about the injuries, even screenshots proving Sarah later branded herself online as a self-made wellness mentor while hiding the truth. My hands trembled while scrolling. The comments exploded instantly. She almost killed a child? She lied for years. How can a life coach hide something like this? This woman built her brand on fake empowerment. Sponsors began announcing they were cutting ties within hours. Clients canceled appointments publicly. People reposted Sarah's old videos beside headlines about the accident. The internet turned vicious fast. I sat frozen on the motel bed reading everything. Part of me felt horrible. Another part whispered something ugly but honest. Finally, at 2 in the morning, Sarah called again, but now her voice sounded shattered. "Mom." I said nothing. "They know." I closed my eyes. "Yes." My sponsors dropped me. Silence. My clients are leaving. More silence. People are calling me a monster. I listened to her cry through the phone for nearly a full minute before speaking. "You should have told the truth years ago." I was scared. "You were protected." She sobbed harder. "I worked so hard to rebuild my life." "No, Sarah. You worked hard to rebuild your image." That sentence hit her hard enough that she stopped crying for a second. Then quietly she whispered, "Do you hate me now?" I stared into the darkness of the motel room. "No." "Then why won't you help me?" Because that was always the real question. Not whether she was sorry. Whether I would rescue her again. I took a long breath. Because saving you every time destroyed both of us. She cried quietly again. Then suddenly she whispered something small and broken. "I don't know how to survive this." And for the first time in many years, my daughter sounded exactly like the terrified 20-year-old girl sitting inside that police station a decade ago. After the scandal exploded online, Sarah stopped posting completely. No smiling wellness videos. No motivational quotes. No staged photos with candles and herbal tea. Silence. The internet noticed immediately. People who once praised her suddenly turned cruel. Old clips of her talking about accountability spread across social media beside headlines about the accident. Strangers mocked her. Former clients demanded refunds. Sponsors released public statements distancing themselves from her brand. Watching it happen felt strange. This was not victory. Victory is supposed to feel warm. This felt cold and exhausting. 3 days later, Sarah called me again, but this time her voice sounded hollow. "The house is officially in foreclosure." I sat quietly holding the phone. "When?" 30 days. I closed my eyes. "So it's final?" "Yes." She laughed weakly, but there was no joy in it. Jason says maybe we should move to another state and start over. And pay for that with what? She did not answer. Deep down, she already knew the truth. There was no fresh start left to perform. Reality had finally caught up. That evening, Leo showed up unexpectedly at my motel room. Robert had arranged it after Sarah asked if he could spend the night with me because she and Jason needed space to figure things out. Space. Adults always use soft words for collapsing lives. Leo walked into the room carrying a backpack almost as big as his body. He looked around quietly before sitting on the bed. "This place is tiny," he whispered. I smiled softly. "Yes, it is. But it feels calm." That sentence broke my heart a little. I ordered pizza and we watched an old cartoon movie together while rain tapped against the motel windows. Halfway through the movie, Leo suddenly asked something that caught me off guard. "Grandma, did Mom really hurt someone?" Children always hear more than people realize. I muted the television slowly. "Yes." "Did she mean to?" "No, sweetheart." "Then why are people so angry?" I thought carefully before answering. "Because sometimes when people make terrible mistakes, they try so hard to hide them that they forget how to tell the truth anymore." Leo stared down at his hands. "Mom lies a lot lately." I felt pain in my chest hearing him say that so casually. "What makes you say that?" "She tells people online we're happy even when she cries every night." I pulled him gently closer. "Your mom loves you." "I know. But loving someone and knowing how to take care of them are not always the same thing." He leaned his head against my shoulder quietly. That night, after he fell asleep, I sat beside the motel window staring into the dark parking lot. I kept replaying everything in my head. The accident. The years of sacrifice. The lies. The anger. The foreclosure. All of it. And beneath every memory was one painful realization. I had spent so much time saving Sarah from consequences that I never taught her how to survive them. The next morning, Jason called. His voice sounded nervous. "Martha, can we meet?" Part of me wanted to refuse immediately. But another part wanted answers. We met at a small diner near downtown around noon. Jason looked terrible. His beard was uneven and dark circles hung beneath his eyes. He stirred his coffee constantly without drinking it. "She's falling apart," he admitted quietly. I stayed silent. "She barely sleeps. She keeps reading comments online." "That's a mistake. She says everyone hates her." I looked at him carefully. "Do you?" He looked down instantly. "Interesting." Jason sighed heavily. "I didn't know the full story." "No. She made sure nobody did. She told me it was just a minor accident." I shook my head slowly. "A child almost died." Jason rubbed both hands across his face. "She's not evil, Martha." "I know. She's scared. She should be." He stared at me for several seconds before speaking again. "You really aren't going to rescue her this time, are you?" That word again. Rescue. As if I had spent 10 years pulling someone from water while they secretly kept jumping back in. "No," I said quietly. Jason nodded slowly like he already expected the answer. Then he surprised me. "I think you're right." I blinked. "She blames everyone for everything," he continued. "Her followers. Her father. You. Even me." He laughed bitterly. "But nobody forced her to lie all these years." For the first time I saw Jason clearly. Not as a villain. Just another weak person swept into Sarah's storm. I loved her, he whispered. You still do. Maybe. But I don't recognize her anymore. Neither did I. A week later, the house was gone. Bank representatives arrived early in the morning. Neighbors watched from windows while movers carried furniture outside. Sarah stood frozen on the porch wearing sunglasses even though the sky was cloudy. Trying to hide swollen eyes. Trying to protect what little pride remained. Jason loaded boxes silently into a rental truck. Leo stood near me gripping my hand tightly. Are we homeless now? He whispered. No, sweetheart. Sarah overheard him and suddenly snapped. Stop talking like I'm some terrible mother. I looked at her carefully. Her hair looked messy. Her expensive clothes wrinkled. The confident woman from social media had vanished completely. For the first time in years, she looked honest. Not polished. Not inspirational. Just broken. I never said you were terrible, I replied softly. Everyone thinks I am. That's because you spent years building a perfect image instead of a real life. Her face crumpled instantly. For a second, I thought she might scream again. Instead, she just started crying quietly right there on the sidewalk. Neighbors pretended not to stare, but they all did. Jason walked away awkwardly pretending to organize boxes. Sarah covered her face with trembling hands. I tried so hard, she whispered. I believed her. That was the tragic part. She truly had tried. But she spent all her energy trying to look healed instead of actually healing. Later that afternoon, Robert called me into his office. There's another issue now, he explained carefully. What issue? He slid papers across the desk. Child services became involved after the foreclosure and online reports. My stomach tightened immediately. What does that mean? It means the court wants to review Leo's living situation. I sat down slowly. Sarah no longer had stable housing. Jason had moved into a friend's apartment temporarily. And Sarah's mental state was becoming worse every day. She can fight it, right? I asked quietly. Yes. But... Robert hesitated. She's unstable right now, Martha. The word hit hard because Sarah once used that same word against me. Now it followed her instead. She missed 2 court meetings already. I closed my eyes. What happens next? Robert looked directly at me. You may need to seek emergency guardianship for Leo. The room suddenly felt smaller. I never wanted that. Never. Taking care of Leo temporarily was one thing. But legally stepping into the role his mother could no longer manage felt devastating. Will she lose him permanently? Not necessarily. But right now the court wants stability. Stability. Such a simple word. Such an expensive thing. That evening I met Sarah outside a small apartment complex where she was temporarily staying with a friend. She looked thinner already. Dark circles surrounded her eyes and her hand shook while lighting a cigarette. I heard about the guardianship hearing, she said quietly. I nodded. You're really doing this? I'm protecting Leo. She stared into the distance. I used to think you wanted control over everything. And now? She swallowed hard. Now I think you were just trying to hold everything together while I kept tearing holes in it. Neither of us spoke for a while. Cars passed slowly nearby while cold wind moved through the trees. Then Sarah whispered something so softly I almost missed it. I don't think I know who I am without pretending anymore. That sentence stayed with me all night. Because underneath all the lies and arrogance and cruelty was still my daughter. A woman who built an entire identity out of performance because she never learned how to survive the truth. The courtroom smelled like old paper and dust. Everything about it felt cold. The gray walls. The wooden benches. Even the light coming through the tall windows looked pale and tired. I sat beside Robert holding my purse tightly in my lap while people quietly shuffled around the room. Across from me, Sarah stared down at the floor wearing a plain sweater and faded jeans. No makeup. No polished image. No camera-ready smile. Just exhaustion. Jason sat behind her, but they barely spoke. Leo sat beside me drawing shapes on a piece of paper while swinging his legs nervously under the chair. I looked at him and forced a small smile. He smiled back immediately. That alone reminded me why I was there. Not revenge. Not punishment. Protection. The judge entered and everyone stood. As the hearing began, I watched Sarah carefully. Her shoulders looked smaller somehow. Like life itself had pressed down on her until even her posture surrendered. Robert presented the financial records first. Foreclosure documents. Missed payments. Housing instability. Screenshots of public harassment online after the scandal spread. The judge listened quietly while flipping through papers. Then Sarah's lawyer stood and explained her side. She experienced severe emotional stress after online exposure connected to an event from her past. Event from her past. Interesting way to describe a child nearly dying. Still, I understood why they softened the language. The truth already sounded brutal enough. The judge finally looked directly at Sarah. Miss Carter, do you currently have stable housing for your son? Sarah swallowed hard. Not yet, Your Honor. Employment? She hesitated. My business collapsed. The courtroom fell silent again. I watched her fingers twist together nervously. For years, Sarah controlled every room she entered. She spoke confidently. Moved confidently. Performed confidence even when her world secretly cracked underneath. But now there was nowhere left to hide. The judge continued gently. Do you believe your mother can currently provide stability for Leo? That question nearly shattered her. I saw tears instantly fill her eyes. For a long moment she could not answer. Then finally she whispered. Yes. My chest tightened painfully. Not because I won. Because hearing your own child admit they failed hurts in ways no outsider can understand. After another hour, the decision came. Temporary emergency guardianship granted to me until Sarah could establish stable housing and complete counseling requirements. Temporary. But even temporary felt enormous. Leo looked confused while people around us gathered papers and stood up. Am I going with Grandma? He whispered. I squeezed his hand gently. Yes, sweetheart. He nodded slowly. Not happy. Not upset. Just tired. As we walked toward the exit, Sarah finally stood and spoke. Martha. I turned. For a second, neither of us knew what to say. Then she asked the question every broken parent eventually fears. Will he hate me? The pain in her voice felt raw and naked. No performance left. No social media wisdom. No fake confidence. Just a mother terrified of losing her child emotionally even before losing him legally. I looked at Leo standing beside me quietly holding his backpack. Then I looked back at Sarah. No. Tears rolled down her face silently. But he will remember who held his hand when the storm came. Sarah closed her eyes after hearing that. Not angry. Not defensive. Just devastated. She nodded once slowly, then turned away before breaking down completely. Outside the courthouse, cold wind rushed through the streets. Reporters waited near the steps hoping for photos because online gossip still surrounded Sarah's scandal. Robert guided us through a side exit to avoid them. As we walked toward the parking lot, Leo suddenly slipped his hand into mine. "Grandma?" "Yes?" "Can Mom get better?" I looked up at the cloudy sky before answering. "I hope so." And I truly meant it. Because despite everything Sarah had done, she was still my daughter. People think love disappears after betrayal, but real love is more complicated than that. Sometimes love remains even after trust collapses. Sometimes you still pray for someone while protecting yourself from them at the same time. The following months were quiet. Quiet in ways my life had not been for years. Leo moved into a small rental house with me on the edge of town. It was nothing fancy, but it felt peaceful. We cooked dinner together, watched movies on old blankets, walked to school every morning while cold air turned our cheeks pink. Slowly he started smiling more, sleeping better, laughing louder. Children bloom quickly once chaos leaves the room. Sarah entered therapy as part of the court agreement. At first she resisted everything. Robert told me she missed sessions and argued with counselors. But eventually something shifted. Maybe because there was finally nobody left to blame. No followers defending her. No sponsors praising her. No carefully edited image protecting her from herself. Just silence and truth. One afternoon, nearly 6 months later, she asked to meet me at a park. I almost refused. But I went. She sat on a bench wearing simple clothes with no makeup and a paper coffee cup between her hands. Her hair looked shorter now. Simpler. Real. When she saw me, she stood awkwardly. "Hi, Mom." The word sounded fragile. "Hi, Sarah." We sat together quietly for a moment, watching leaves blow across the grass. Then she surprised me. "I read the police report again." I stayed silent. For the first time in years. Her voice trembled slightly. "I spent so long convincing myself I was the victim because I couldn't survive being the villain." I looked at her carefully. This was the most honest sentence she had spoken in over a decade. "I was scared if people knew the truth they would stop loving me," she whispered. "And?" She stared down at her coffee. "They did." I shook my head slowly. "No, Sarah. Some people left because they loved the version of you that wasn't real." Tears filled her eyes again. "But you stayed." "Barely." That honesty hurt both of us, but it mattered. She nodded slowly. "I know." Then, after a long silence, she whispered something small and broken. "I'm sorry for the suitcase." Out of everything she could apologize for, that was what haunted her most. Not the mortgage. Not the lies online. The suitcase. Because deep down she finally understood what that moment truly meant. It was not just anger. It was rejection. I looked out across the empty park before answering. "I forgave you a long time ago, Sarah." She blinked in surprise. "But forgiveness doesn't rebuild trust overnight." She nodded again, wiping tears from her cheeks. "I know." Months later, the court allowed supervised weekend visits with Leo. Slowly, carefully, Sarah started rebuilding her relationship with him. Not through inspirational speeches or social media posts. Through ordinary things. Homework. Board games. Simple conversations. Truth. One evening after dropping Leo home, she stood near my front porch nervously. I used to think strength meant never needing anyone, she admitted quietly. And now? She looked toward the house where Leo laughed and sighed while setting the dinner table. Now I think real strength is admitting when you destroyed something and staying long enough to repair it. For the first time in many years, I saw something peaceful in her eyes. Not perfection. Not performance. Just humility. And maybe that was the beginning of real healing. I once held back the rain for my daughter. Now I'm just holding the umbrella for my grandson. Sometimes the only way to learn how to swim is to finally be left standing in the water alone. I am Martha, and this is a story about the final truth. And before you go, please like, subscribe, share, and comment where you watched this story from and what time it is in your country right now. Your support truly means everything, and I love reading every single comment from all around the world.